This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, rising generation and children of royalty? This is Stephen, your host from Fantology, joined with our resident Grand Maester, Hayden, who will be providing some expert level, hopefully, right, Hayden, guidance on House of the Dragon, and we're talking about episode 6.
Yeah, super excited to talk about this episode because, in my opinion, it was the best one yet. And I was super nervous about the time jump and the new actresses, new actors, all of it. You know, it was definitely scary moving into it, but I think they nailed it.
I also, after watching, I thought this is the best episode yet, and that's not the first time that I've thought this with the show. Not every time, but there's been several where I'm like, this is the best one so far. So that's good. That's a good sign.
Totally.
So, like you say, there's a lot of questions around the time skip, the different actors and actresses. What stood out to you, especially because it sounds like both of us thought that they really nailed it on all fronts.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got that opening scene, that one shot scene with Rhaenyra, first giving birth to this new child, and then Alicent immediately wanting to inspect it, and Rhaenyra walking, saying, "All right, if you're gonna inspect my baby, I'm gonna go bring it to you," and walks across, the courtyard and whatever, all the way to her. And I thought the acting was just phenomenal in that entire scene, and it was immediately blown away. I think it was a great scene to introduce Emma Darcy as Rhaenyra.
Yeah, I agree. It really just introduced you, caught you up really quickly. Like 10 years have passed, and the characters, we had a pretty good glimpse of where they were headed from the end of episode 5. But then, into episode 6, a lot of time has passed. Not sure exactly where things stand, but immediately that was established, and that scene did a lot to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So we have some questioning from Alicent about the true parentage of Rhaenyra's children immediately right off the bat. Saying that they are plain featured and look a lot like Harwin Strong.
I was a little disappointed we didn't get the comment about them being strong boys, like, oh, you're whatever it was in Fire and Blood, right? That was one of the inciting comments.
Yeah, but you could tell she chose every opportunity to put that in there to whoever she was speaking with. Which obviously is not an ideal situation for Rhaenyra's lineage. Yet that's the case, and everyone's questioning it. So,
and it's just a continuation of this arrangement that she came to with Laenor at the end of episode 5, or in episode 5, and you can tell that she didn't really think about the future consequences, because now 10 years have passed and she has 3 illegitimate children, and this is kind of the crux of the conflict right now, because Alicent feels like she's been lied to and betrayed, and really the court has kind of been made a mockery because of Rhaenyra's irresponsible actions. And Josh isn't here on this episode, but I think if Josh was here, he would be bashing Rhaenyra not acting like the princess that Westeros needs.
Well, we watched the episode together, and Josh is now a team black. So
really,
he didn't. Yeah,
he switched.
Switched.
That's the opposite of how I thought he would act.
He switched because Alicent made some questionable, decisions, or the people on her side, at least during this episode. So
I'm the other way. I'm totally team green.
Really? Okay, that's surprising to me. Why did you decide to switch?
I think okay. So neither side has too much moral high ground, and
Right.
any that they do is, we can probably assume, is going to be eroded pretty quickly. But I just get the sense that Allison wants, she wants like righteousness and justice in the kingdom, and she sees Rhaenyra as an affront to that. I think Josh is probably upset because Rhaenyra is kind of extending an olive branch with her marriage proposal, and Allison kind of brushes it aside and bosses Viserys around. But Allison comes off to me as a pretty strong ruler and is getting what she wants done, and more effective in a more effective way than any other nobility that we've seen on the show so far, at least in this episode.
Yeah, I would agree that in this show, I'm definitely I see where Allison's coming from a lot more than I do when I read Fire and Blood, and I definitely like can kind of side with her in a lot of these situations. And it was interesting, that whole small council scene where they're talking and Allison, gives her advice and Rhaenyra gives her advice, and they both like strong counsel and both have very strong voices now in the council. And I thought that was really, really cool. Really cool to see that Rhaenyra had kind of stepped up, and that Allison had also stepped up. I think Allison had the most change out of all of the characters in this 10-year time gap, it seems.
Yeah, she went, even in episode 5, that seemed like where she had started to change, but she went from being fairly naive and almost like overly romantically optimistic about life to now settling into court politics and intrigue. However, she's not, she's still surprised by what's his name, Laris Clubfoot, right? She's surprised by the lengths that he goes to.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. And so she hasn't like completely descended into intrigue, and she's not an evil person by any means.
Yeah, but she has definitely got a snake in her garden, whispering her things and doing things for her. That was, a shock to everyone, right? Because in Fire and Blood, we don't know exactly how the fire starts and how they die. In that, who starts that fire, right? And Laris was the perfect pick, I think, for this. And it's just telling to how much he's willing to do to gain advantage in this battle.
I think this show really needed a villain like this, someone that we can clearly say this guy's a villain, because there were a lot of characters like that in Game of Thrones. And, we have lots of characters of nebulous moral standing, but this is a good villain. This is someone that you can kind of, you can see the evil wheels in his head turning, but we're also not sure exactly, what his end goals are. I think he's a great Game of Thrones character.
Yeah, but we can also kind of speculate, about his end goals, because his, his family that he killed his brother was supposed to inherit Harrenhal, but now it falls on him, right? And that kind of leaves a spot open for when Viserys dies, a possible marriage between him and Alicent. And to think about that, it's kind of because we don't know how involved they are, but it was kind of weird that he was just already chomping on the food when she walked in, to that meeting, and you could tell that they spent a lot of time together.
So one thing that we've talked about, kind of on the flip side of this, we've talked about this a little bit on our Phantology Discord. People feel like this show is missing a character, like a more righteous character, someone who, the Jon Snow type character, someone who does have strong moral fiber, and we can just kind of cheer for without worrying that he's about to go off and do something wicked. That character doesn't really exist, right?
Yeah, I'd agree. There's not really, there's no like hero, right? Everyone's kind of gray in this story.
And I wonder if some of the kids, some of the rising generation, yeah, I mean, I remember enough of Fire and Blood to kind of know what happens to most of them, but I think that there's room there with some of their characters to turn at least one of them into someone that we can really cheer for. And I do think the show needs that. I mean, for all that it's fun to kind of see a bunch of wicked scheming people go after each other, it's also nice to have someone that we can actually cheer for, like Hope does well.
Yeah, it is nice. And right now, we're all clinging to our own little uh the lesser evil people.
Yeah,
For me,
exactly.
that's Damon. I'm clinging to Damon still. Um, yeah, and so it would be nice, to have one of these kids or somebody in the future to kind of root for. Um, it was awesome to see all these kids introduced and to see that they are going to be a big part of this story because in A Song
Yeah,
of Ice and Fire, the focus is the children,
right, right,
and how they grow in the world amidst all this conflict
right.
and the decisions they make. And so this will be really, really exciting. I'm really excited to see. I loved all of the actors for these kids already, and so I'm really excited to see where they go.
Seeing all these kids being introduced and training in the courtyard, like you say, a lot of shades of the Stark kids at the
Mhm.
beginning, and that was really the heart of the show. So I do also, I really liked the kids being introduced. So give us a little rundown of who these kids are. For I'm imagining there's some viewers who are like, man, there were already a lot of characters, now there's even more, and their names all kind of sound similar. So
Yeah, so
who do we
we
have?
have Aegon, obviously, who was the first kid introduced a few episodes ago.
Mm-hmm.
On his
The oldest one with the very
yeah,
long hair.
he's the old kind of like punk kid that's
Yep.
being a teenager publicly out his window.
Uh-huh.
Which by the way might be the same window. Kind of look like the same window that Tommen jumps out of in Game of Thrones. I
Yeah,
was like,
that would
oh,
be ironic.
yeah. But yeah, Aegon, he's Alicent uh thinks that he's going to be the heir to the throne. And we'll see how that goes. And then we have his younger brother, Aemon, um, who is a very interesting character. He's very obsessed with the dragons, as we can tell,
Hmm.
and he doesn't have one yet. He hasn't claimed a dragon yet, and so these other
Right.
kids are picking on him, bringing him the pink dread, which is kind of funny, but it's kind of cruel because that's like, as a Targaryen, that's like your right to a
Right.
dragon,
Right.
and he doesn't have one yet.
What
But
dragon was it that he saw down in the dragon pit?
that was Vagar, Lena's dragon. So
So
very,
Lena's dragon was in the, but she was often, they were often lease.
yeah. There is some travel stuff going on here, because yeah, there's quite a bit of scenes that just kind of like jump. They kind
Okay.
of skip the travel between places in this episode, and that's one that I was kind of confused about as well. Vagar being
Okay.
in the pit, but it definitely looked like Vagar to me. Uh, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. Could
And
be a different dragon.
Vagar is a much older dragon, right?
Vagar's
He's the
the
one.
oldest and the
Yeah.
biggest. Yeah, dragon.
Right. Right.
So that was kind of like uh, a scary scene approaching that dragon in the in the pit. So yeah, so Aemon, super interested in where he goes and what dragon he will claim. I already know because I've read Fire and Blood, but still excited to see it.
Uh-huh.
And then we have the other kids, the strong kids.
Well, wait, you're skipping what's her name? The daughter.
Oh yeah, Helena.
Wait, yeah.
Yeah, Helena is also a super interesting character now in this show because they added some things to her character that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I
She's
couldn't really remember much of her character from the book. Is she like in the book much? Am I just forgetting?
she is, yeah. She's
Okay.
definitely there in the books. And so her mother, I believe, or her no, her daughter her daughter is kind of like, they kind of allude to her being kind of like off a little bit, socially, mentally.
Uh-huh.
Um, but her in this show, she seemed like she might have been like on the spectrum, a little bit autistic or something,
Uh-huh.
from what we saw. So that's interesting.
And there was
Um,
one line, I mean, without doing spoilers, there was a line that sounded kind of prophetic that she said.
yeah, so I think she's a green seer. That's my, take on it.
And
It definitely sounded very green seer, like it sounded a lot like Patchface, like interesting things there. And so yeah, I don't want to spoil anything.
okay.
But take that for what it is. That those things that she was saying are very interesting ideas as she's playing with that bug.
Yeah.
So yeah, Helena, really excited to see where they take that character in the show. Yeah, and then we have Rhaenyra's kids. We have little Jacaerys, Jace, and Lucerys or Lucerys. I don't know how you say it.
Okay.
Luke. They call him
Jason
Luke.
Luke.
So Jason Luke, very easy.
Mhm.
And those kids kind of seemed, we didn't get a whole lot of them. They're a little bit younger, so they seem sweet, sweet kids. I did think that fight scene, like in the yard when they're sparring, between Jace and Aegon, I felt like Jace held his own in that
Yeah,
fight.
he did. Yeah, for
He's
sure.
he's a pretty good fighter there.
Yeah, yeah.
Even with Aegon like throwing the dummy at him,
Mhm.
he still did really well, and so that was cool.
Yeah,
Um,
Aegon and Aemond definitely seem like more rich, bratty nobility, a la like Joffrey, right, from Game of
yeah,
Thrones. While Jason Luke kind of seem like almost Stark kids, like kids that we can cheer for.
yeah, definitely. And we'll see how they grow up and what decisions they make in the future. But for now, that's how it seems.
Uh-huh.
But I did like Aegon a little bit more than I liked him in the book in the show. I felt
Okay.
like there were some moments there that I was okay with,
Okay.
So
It's got some potential.
yeah, he's got a little bit of potential. He's not so Joffrey like. Yeah,
And then the last was Joffrey, who's just an infant.
Joffrey. Yeah,
Yeah.
little baby Joffrey.
And okay, so I don't want to do a spoiler here, but I'm guessing we're getting more time jumps, right? Because some things from the trailer were obviously like some of these characters further being aged up. So I'm guessing by the end of the season, like that's basically a confirmed thing. We're going at least like 5 more years in the future.
Yeah, so I heard there's gonna be one more time jump. Not sure when that will be. Um, yeah, one more. So, which is pretty good. So far, the time jumps haven't been bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And now that we have like these official, the Rhaenyra, Alicent, and Laenor, um, actors, they seem pretty solid.
Yeah. I think another thing that I thought was interesting from the book is, and you kind of alluded to this, the book just kind of details a lot of events without always providing an answer to some mysteries, like, oh, so and so died randomly this year. And as a reader, you're just like, okay, they just died, like they're gone. And the Strongs were an example of that. And so I'm looking forward to that, getting some additional answers, seeing the world fleshed out even more. I think it's cool that the bones of the story are there from George, but the showrunners are doing a great job of making it more interesting and more alive, I would say.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, like I mean the whole thing with and recruiting the guys from the dungeon
Uh-huh.
to light that fire and then cutting out their tongues so they wouldn't talk about it.
Uh-huh.
That was pretty cool. It was a good addition, and I think they're doing a really good job.
Very, very on brand there for Game
Yeah,
of
it
Thrones.
was.
Yeah.
It definitely felt like Game of Thrones. I was like, yes. um, yeah, I agree with you. The books, like this whole time, 10-year time jump, that there are things that happen, and we missed a lot in the character development. there, but it's, in the books we don't get that much either. So we don't actually know the proof of like what happens. So like those time jumps are okay to us.
So we didn't talk about Damon at all. We were mostly just focused on events of King's Landing. So Damon's off in Lease, just kind of, it is Lease, right? It's just
in Pentos,
or Pentos. Okay.
Yeah, he's he's over there just kind of being a guest, and taking his guest right, just chilling. But he's not super I don't know. No, maybe it did seem like he was a little bit more content with that at the beginning. He was going to take that offer. But yeah, but Lena didn't necessarily agree there. I think she sees the potential in Damon and is trying to remind him of that. Because it does seem like Damon's kind of, we don't know what's happened in their whole relationship. We don't get that. So it's kind of hard to know, how intimate their relationship was and everything. But yeah, there, that I love that whole scene that they were, talking on the wall up there, the castle.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. I appreciated all the scenes with them. It felt like there was some love there. Like when she died, that was very sad. Very sad.
And the the symmetry to Viserys there, where he had to make the same decision. Ultimately, I guess he didn't really. We don't know what decision he made or how Lena was able to get out of the birthing chamber and like sneak away from him and get to Vhagar. Like, yeah, okay. Like, I guess it works because it's a TV show, but
we don't know. Yeah, we don't know. I guess there was a scene that they cut out of him like hugging the girls and everything, but they couldn't make Damon out to be a softie. So
but there was a scene where he was with one of his daughters and kind of seemed like a decent father. And
he was teaching her High Valyrian in their library, and I thought that was really cool. But also, he's like, Damon spent a lot of his time, it sounds like, studying and learning about his ancestors, the dragon riders that came before him, and it seems like he's preparing to like rule, and he's like teaching his kids High Valyrian. He's like preparing them to be dragon riders. And it's like very I don't know. He still thinks that there's a chance for him to rule, it seems.
And he's got twin daughters. Bela, was that one of the?
Yeah, Bela.
And there's one other who I don't remember her name.
Yeah, I can't remember her name right now either.
Okay, one of them has a dragon. One has a dragon. One doesn't, and that's kind of the main differentiation between them right now.
Right. So Bela doesn't have a dragon, right? Bela does not.
Hard to say.
I think.
Okay.
I can't remember. But yeah, one of them does not have a dragon, and she has the egg. It's like, been an egg for like 8 years or something. I think they said that. But it hasn't hatched yet, which is another interesting point. Like, we don't know what hatches dragon eggs. We still don't know. Like Daenerys gets those eggs that were dormant for so many years, and somehow they hatch too. So we don't know.
And so now at the end, Daemon and his family, after Lena perishes, are headed back to Dragonstone to meet up with Rhaenyra, and that's kind of the lead in to our next episode. So I'm excited to see where it goes from here. Lines are being further drawn. I guess what else can we expect? And then Otto, who is absent for this episode, I think we can say he's gonna be coming back.
He's in the preview.
After the most recent events. And I think I don't think we're going to full scale war quite yet, but I think some of the introductory acts are upon us.
Definitely. There was a lot of setup and a lot of foreshadowing in that episode for events that are coming. Really exciting.
Okay, so we've done this before, but who would you say won the episode and who lost the episode?
Who won? Who lost? I would say. I mean, Laris won. If I'm being honest,
He advanced his cause really nicely.
he won, and yeah, and poor old Viserys has lost in so many ways.
Once again, he's lost.
In so many ways, yeah. It's such a sad ending. And we see that he's kind of deteriorating. So he's getting to his end there. But I think Lionel was obviously the biggest loss, during the episode. Like he was such a great hand.
A decent guy.
Yeah, and Viserys says it like he he didn't have his self-interest in mind. Like he was just a very he put the realm first. And he was trying to get out of that situation. He was like, I'm trying to resign, I'm trying to leave. But Viserys wouldn't let him. He was trying to flee the storm, as it gathered, and it didn't work out for him. So poor guy.
I'll say I think in some ways Alicent was a winner in this episode. She was able to take enough control in court to force Rhaenyra out, which is something Rhaenyra had been resisting for 10 years. So now Alicent just kind of has the king's ear unrivaled.
Pouring honey in his ear. Yep.
A loser for me, maybe Laenor, who seems like he just has a pretty crappy life.
Poor Laenor. He seems like he's like a decent guy,
Yeah.
But he's just not built for it. He's not built for this whole game, for the courts. He's not in it.
No, he's trapped in this marriage. He's trapped in this, royal expectations, and has nothing to do in King's Landing except enjoy the pleasures of life, which are only going to last so long,
Yeah, but Rhaenyra is like, bring him with you.
Yeah,
which was pretty cool of her.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Did we miss anything? I feel like we kind of covered our bases there. Episode 6, the best episode so far.
Yeah. I mean, there was one other thing that I'm curious about. We've seen that firefly on the staff, on Laris's staff. I believe it was confirmed it's a firefly.
Okay.
And it was also the brooch that those criminals were wearing. What do you think that means? I don't really know.
If it's a firefly, maybe a lot of times these whisper type people are insectoid, right? So kind of like a spider, firefly, some kind of symbol of sneaking around and gathering information. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, because I felt like the rats were kind of more of a symbol of Laris. And it's been kind of alluding to what he's been doing in the shadows. But then we get this like new symbol of the firefly, and I'm curious as to what it means. And maybe it's just because he lights fires at Harrenhal and kills people. But I guess we'll find out.
Fire and blood.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Hayden. Appreciate your insight there. I think I've learned something. Hopefully our listeners feel the same. And onward to episode 7.